Good evening, everyone. Welcome to OT Security Huddle episode 16. Today, we are going to talk about the beginners' strategies for OT security. Joining me is Mike Holcomb. You know him from LinkedIn. He is one of the biggest thought leaders in OT security now. There is no need of introduction for him. When I published this particular huddle session, I started getting the messages that, yeah, it's really good to see Mike again talking on the beginner strategy, and this is the one most asked question for both of us. We get a lot of messages directly also, and then the comment section also in our posts. How do they start? So we decided that let's do one more on this one. We have already done such kind of sessions for beginners, but yeah, uh, there is a need of a refresher. We also learn throughout the journey what are the changes, what are the new things that we learn interacting the mentees that we had mentored. So yeah, that is the background. So thanks, Mike, for accepting this invite. And I know you have been not doing well in last week, so I hope you are doing well now. Uh, Thanks for accepting this. Yeah, looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, and yeah, hopefully I won't cough too many times during the session.
Yeah. Okay, so this is me and Mike. Mike is a veteran in OT and now in OT security. He has been teaching different classes. He is doing some free sessions online. Recently, he has actually provided a very low cost training for 3 days on OT security that was quite comprehensive. And earlier also, he had done some 20-hour course. So if you're interested, you can watch his YouTube channel. And maybe in future, if you get a chance, do get into those trainings. They are really wonderful trainings with uh, almost no cost, right? And myself, Shiv, and I also run this OT Security Huddle. I started this around year and a half ago, and since then we have been doing this different focused discussion on OT security topics, whether it's risk assessment or incident management, security testing, and other topics. So if you want us to include some specific topic, please do let us know either through comments or an email, whatever way you want. We will try to indicate those sessions. My regular co-host Manju is not available today, unfortunately, so I'll take it forward. Before we begin with the agenda, a formal disclaimer, like it's just to uh, showing that whatever we are discussing here is not nothing to do with our professional lives. Our day job is different, and this is an outcome of the personal interest that we want to share the knowledge that we have gathered. So please don't construe the opinions as organizational opinion. They are our own opinions. Yeah. So what we are going to discuss today is a bit of what is OT security career looks like. Then how do you start for OT security? Then you might have some questions that I'm starting my OT security career and I'm feeling sort of resources, sort of career paths, all those things. Maybe you are a beginner in the career already, and then you feel some uh, your professional life related issues. So we might try to address those things. Then we'll discuss the best strategies that work for us, might work for you, and we'll also share our experience interacting with mentees when we discuss these strategies. And at the end, how does the future looks like? It's a loosely fitted agenda because we want to discuss more with our experience rather than putting it to a structure. We had already done a number of things around that. Mike have published two different books for two different kind of professional getting into OT security. Maybe he'll get a chance to talk about those books in a bit. But yeah, that would be the agenda. Having said that, once again, thanks, Mike. So let's begin with the agenda of the day. And I'll start with the first question. How does the career in OT security looks like? What are the options that we have here? What would you like to say?
Yeah, I mean, if we want me to go first, there's in ICS and OT cybersecurity, there's a couple of different main roles I think we see, and they're very comparable to kind of their equivalents in the IT IT world. So you'll hear things like architect, right? So you want a security architect. So you need somebody that understands how all the different industrial control systems and the networking pieces come together to be able to design a secure architecture for that environment. That's the number one, cybersecurity control for me, at least. It's the most important in control system and environments. So you'll see analysts, right? We have, yeah, kind of in IT cybersecurity, right? You have a very general term of cybersecurity analyst, which pretty means you can do just about anything, whether it's patching servers or vulnerability management, or maybe you work in a SOC, or you're watching, maybe you're not in a full-time SOC, but at least you're watching alerts that come from a SIM and you're responding to those and doing the investigation. And you have very similar equivalents in the OT space as well. And then where I think it gets interesting in the IT or in the ICSOT space, and when I say IT, I think just depending on the environment and the organization, it's you might have one team that does both IT and OT, or you might have completely separate teams that one does IT and one does OT, cybersecurity, and they don't even talk or communicate, which is horrible. Or at least you have separate teams that are communicating and are working together, which obviously would be ideal. So it just depends on the environment. So it's interesting because you have very similar, at least at a high level, similar roles in the OT world. But it's going to depend on the organization that you go to work with, as far as how much you're really doing, and again looking at kind of the bridge between OT and IT, and how that's handled within the organization.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. So both are the parallels, and there is no one role across the entire cybersecurity life cycle. There are roles starting from the beginners, then we have roles like architects, analysts, then we have GRC roles as well. We have the roles for security testing, specifically the vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. And then we also have roles for the product development lifecycle side, the expertise of doing the secure code reviews and understanding of the industrial softwares and all those things. So yeah, there are n number of opportunities available across the horizon of the security. Yeah. Then as compared to IT security roles, you already mentioned, Mike, like they are parallel to each other. Whatever roles you see in the IT side of the world, they are exactly available in the OT side of the world. So opportunities when they come, and definitely they are they are available across the overall life cycle of the security itself. So now we know that there are opportunities, there are roles, but there is also prerequisites when you get into OT security side of the world. Apart from knowing the skills, there are some other prerequisites like the the willingness to go into the field, willingness to working with the machines. That's quite different from your IT side of the world. In the IT side of the world, most of the things are currently available on internet, or maybe on your corporate IT side. You can just see them, you can just watch them. But on the OT side of the world, you need to have the willingness to go in the field, experience the machines, and then understand the impact of these machines are actually bringing to the businesses they are driving there. When you relate with the machine, then your understanding of security will be refined, that what is most critical there which I need to protect. And that's also one of the prerequisite. I remember, Mike, you mentioned this point, and some of your posts, you say that the first thing that you do when you get into OT security is have the mindset that I'll be willing to work in the fields, willing to be worked into factories and the industries in harshness of the climates, harshness of the weather. But what else do you think is the key things that a professional who is looking towards the OT security should possess?
Yeah, there's a couple things that I always look for, and this is whether it's, I think, just the type of person I've always been, but also as a hiring manager, the different types of people that I'm looking for, or just the different people I'm drawn to that I love working with. there's definitely, you want to find those people that are passionate about ICS/OT cybersecurity. I think that goes a long way. I think for most of us, we have to be passionate to work in OT cybersecurity, and to do what we do a lot of times, especially for those that have long careers in the industry. Um, you know, between passion, being a lifelong learner, right? Being able to take that initiative and learn a lot on your own. There's not a ton of materials out there on OT cybersecurity, right? Which is a big reason why I think both of us put out the content that we do. Um, no one, not, I should not, no, excuse me, but not everyone can afford to spend, $9,000 on a SANS course,
Yeah.
right? And then, and so a lot of the learning you're going to have to do, really on your own. Take that initiative, and then, like you mentioned, being able to be on site. I worked probably for about a year and a half, on calls with engineers about cybersecurity on different projects, which was great and which was
Okay.
really awesome. But it was about a year and a half before I actually stepped foot on a project site. It was actually a very large power plant, and until you actually are there and you see the plant in action, and this one was in the middle of commissioning, so it was a little even more interesting because we were still building part of it. Um, so not only did you have one of the lines running and you had electricity in the air and flowing through you, but you also had pipes, running over your head, that were being transported. That if they dropped on you, they would kill you in an instant. So um, even in a fully constructed environment, right, many of these can be very dangerous. Um, so I don't think people really take that to heart until they're actually on site and wearing the PP, and you've got the hard hat and the safety goggles, and going into an environment where they tell you if you wear the wrong types of clothes you could die. It becomes very much more serious, right? Than in IT, where you walk into the office, and just kind of show up and do your thing for the day without having to worry about
Yeah.
your physical safety. So yeah, I go back and just think, passion definitely has to be there. It definitely has to be a driver. I think that needs to be there anywhere, but especially in ICS OT. And part of that helps overcome that second hurdle, where you are going to have to do a lot of learning on your own because there just isn't a ton of information out there still. We've come a long way in the last 5-10 years, especially because of folks like Rob Lee and Mike Asante and Tim Conway and Derek Harp and others. But again, there's still just not a ton of a ton of information out there.
Yeah.
So that's where looking for those types of folks, and you really got to get on site, even if you can just reach out, make connection with somebody. Maybe they have like a factory where they wouldn't mind giving you a tour, right? Just being able to go in and see the factory and them actually producing something essentially from nothing, and then looking at that process and how it happens, and looking at how the control systems and how the networking comes into place. I think it really helps it just really bring
Absolutely.
the big picture into focus for people.
Yeah, yeah. The ability to visualize and correlate it with physical space is very much important. I'll share one of my experiences. Like around 5 years ago, I was working on a substation's security document, and then when I was writing it, so I was not able to visualize that how these things will turn on. Then I reached out one of my friend who was working in utilities. I spoke to him that whether there is a possibility to visit one of his substations. So while I was writing the document, I went to one of the substations, and whatever I was putting in the document, nothing made sense when I actually went there because the systems were completely different. So I need to have a different look that how do you make it usable for the people. The people who don't have that much of digitalization, they can also use the document. So that much of visualization and then practical experience is much more relevant. Also, on the work place, expectations are completely different. We had worked on the steel plants where you need to put on your safety boots. They will be entirely
Mhm.
covered in dirt, and then you will be working in the 50-degree temperature. You'll be sweating like a pig, and then you have to walk a lot. Like every day we'll do 20,000, 25,000 steps. These one
Mhm.
plant to another plant would be so big, so distance will be very much. So the willingness and then the perseverance to really learn the actual machines will give you a good edge over the others. So that's what I would like to say in terms of prerequisites and the willingness to work in this space. It's not like those regular corporate jobs. Of course, there would be roles like GRC and all, but if you are not able to gel with the people who are actually working in the plant, then the effectiveness of, if you are driving a program, would be less. The people might not follow. And security is people, process, and technology. You need to bring all these things together to actually have a successful program.
Mhm.
Yeah,
For
so
sure.
those are the career options, the prerequisites. Now let's get into how do I start my career. I'm a beginner, and then I learned bit of automation. I'm an automation engineer for quite some time, and now I see that automation have a saturation. After some time you would be an engineer. If you don't get into a managerial role, then you'll be still be programming PLCs. This might become, uh, you might feel the boredom, you might feel saturation, and then you start exploring the roles like OT security. And since you already have the understanding of OT, getting into security would be one of your good career options. So for me, the path would be different. I need to learn the security aspect of it. Uh, First, need to learn the security from the IT world, and then need to put it into my OT understanding. That's how it works. But Mike, you have written books. I will give this section to you. I know you're having a sore throat, bit of difficulty in speaking, but yeah, this is your section. So please add, how do an automation engineer get the career starting in OT security?
Yeah, for folks that come from an OT or automation background, I always focus on two things. One is learn networking fundamentals because I was really surprised. I think engineers know everything. And that's not necessarily true. And I think one of the biggest gaps is typically how networking works. And so understanding even just the basics of network, right? The network connects all of the different systems together these days. Want to be able to understand how that functions and operates and ties everything together. I think that's definitely one of those key pieces that's missing for folks typically coming from the OT world. So learn networking and the basics, and then on top of that, learning the cybersecurity fundamentals, right, and how they work in the IT world. And I always sometimes I always like to also think of you want to learn about it from the IT perspective because when we think of the vast majority of attacks in OT, right, they come from the IT network. You want to understand how cybersecurity works in the IT world. So when hopefully you're talking with your IT counterparts, that you have that common vernacular, and you have that ability to have a conversation with them, that basic understanding of, again, at least the fundamentals. So I always
Yeah.
tell folks, go out and study for and go take the Security Plus certification exam.
Mhm.
Just by doing that, that covers the vast majority of the cybersecurity fundamentals that really get you up and running. Right. So it doesn't get you hands-on experience. So hopefully you work in an organization like at Floor, we have engineers that want to get more into, control system cybersecurity. And we've had engineers that have gone and got masters in cybersecurity, which is great because they're that interested. And then at the same time, I have to tell them, yeah, you don't really know anything about cybersecurity, though, even though they just went and got, a master's because they don't have any hands-on. And so we basically work with them like in internships to bring the engineers over and have them work in the SOC, or have them work in vulnerability management, or have them, work in all these different areas to get different types of experience. So yeah, if you're coming from OT, you want to learn networking, right? Get the networking basics. I'm not saying go out and get a, someone actually asked me the other day on LinkedIn, you don't need to go out and get a CCNA from Cisco. You don't have to go that deep,
Yeah.
right? But just get the networking basics, like Network Plus is great. And then build into the security fundamentals, like with Security Plus.
Hmm.
Right? That's a great way to get excuse me, started, and then being able to get some hands-on experience with cybersecurity. And usually in most environments, there's an IT team, doing IT cybersecurity, and you could reach out to them and ask, hey, can I, work with you a little bit as time permits, or sometimes even on your own time, to be able to get some of that experience and see how cybersecurity kind of works out there in the IT world.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Yeah, understanding the basics of networking is very important. You need to be able to visualize how the communication is traversing through the cables. What are the different requirements of putting a nested or the netting over the network? What are the DSCP protocols? What are the DNS protocols? Then only you will be able to judge whether my traffic is routing to the right side of the network or it's going also into undesired locations, and a better understanding of the overall infrastructure basically. Also, you rightly mentioned about this that your certifications are not the necessary, the skill and knowledge is necessary. There are n number of courses available. The Security Plus is good one. You can also do Cisco courses. And when you mentioned Cisco, the one thing that comes to my mind is David Bombal. He has done a lot of Cisco courses already, and he also does free YouTube videos. So a lot of learning is also available there. Then there are courses on LinkedIn Learning, which could also be helpful to understand the basics of cybersecurity. On YouTube, also there are some 8-hour course, 10-hour course available for CEH kind of cybersecurity basics. So that would be a good starting point to learn cybersecurity over there. Okay, yeah. So we are sorted with the people, I guess, for from automation side, trying to get into the OT side of the world, OT security side of the world. Now, how about the people who are in the IT world? They understand networking very well. They understand maybe basic of cybersecurity, the IT side of the world, but they don't have understanding of automation. So they would require a different learning path. Specifically, they need to start with the industrial control system. Uh, and when I discuss these things and I try to relate these things with your real life experience, like going into a supermarket, you will see a small conveyor belt. So consider this as an industrial control system. You have a conveyor belt, you put your groceries, then the conveyor belt will move, it will come to the barcode scanner, then it will stop. The executive there will scan these items, and then when there is a space, then again the conveyor belt will start rotating. When you visualize these things, then it will give you understanding of how these OT side of technology is working. You will have actuators, you will have sensors, you will have a brain behind it, all those things. And in one of the PLC course, I even learned that you can actually correlate this automation system with the functionality of human beings. Like, eyes are the actuators, eyes are the sensors, and your limbs are the actuators. You see something, then you actuate, and your brain is actually giving you the command. So these machines are basically automation of the labor that was earlier done by human beings only. We had industrial revolution, they mechanized it, and later on we have automated it through computers and digital devices. So that's how you need to learn OT side of the world, and then put your understanding of IT side of the world, your cybersecurity understanding into OT, and then you are good to go. You have written again one more guide, Mike, on this. What would you like to add here?
Yeah, if you're coming from IT, which is the world I come from, right? I mean, I got into I've been into IT, I should say computers and cybersecurity before we called it cybersecurity. I just was always the focus. I mean, I get to do what I've always wanted wanted to do since I was a kid, and so I've come from this world. So I can talk to, yeah, the first couple of things that I had to learn, which made a significant difference, is, first of all, I had to learn to think like an engineer. And I was always fascinated, I think, with engineering and especially electrical, um, from early on. But it's a very different mindset, and it's just one of those things until you start to sit down and look at things from an engineering perspective, or if you want to say from a physics perspective, right? We have to understand any environment that we go into in the OT world is very different. Even a power, you go with two different power plants and they're very different, or two water treatment facilities, they're very different. And and so you have to understand, how the physics of that plant works, right? That's a big part of how we secure this environment, because it's really, what are we ultimately trying to protect, right? Why does this plant exist? What is it doing?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, thinking like an engineer is definitely a big one. Understanding the physics, and understanding maybe just the basic engineering concepts, just like how we want, folks coming from OT to understand the networking fundamentals, right? Understanding the engineering fundamentals. That's definitely the way to go. I'm actually working on my CAP through ISA right now. So, I can tell you all the four different types of sensors we use to take temperature, right? That's, not something that you usually pick up from the IT world. Um, learning to think like an engineer, definitely. And then I think you had also started to touch on really understanding the basics of the different types of control systems that are out there, the PLCs, or when we talk about DCS, data historians, engineering workstations. And that's one where it's hard, I think, especially when you're coming from IT, because you also need to not just read, but you want to get some hands-on experience.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a challenge, because it's, I mean, still the best way to do it is to go buy a PLC and install the software on an engineering workstation to make that connection, and be able to program that PLC. And that not only takes time, but it takes money, right? And the cheapest PLC you're probably going to get, is still going to be a couple $100. And so, yeah, and that's, I've been very fortunate that work, covers a lot of my PLCs, not all of them, but a lot of them. Um, so if you go and buy, like, I have a Siemens SL, was it 1200, right? And the PLC is I think, excuse me, I got about for $500 or $600, but the software, right? And the license is even more
Yeah.
of a substantial cost. But at the same time, being able to take that PLC, install the software, to be able to then, and I could go way off the deep end here, so I'll pull myself back. But to make those connections to program the PLC, it really clicks things into place. Then how about building out an HMI, and looking at that HMI to PLC communication as you're trying to control this process. So, for folks that want to do a PLC, if you want to go down that route and purchase one, Automation Direct, it has the Click Plus line of PLCs where you can get them fully loaded for like $400. These are actually the PLCs that SANS uses for Rob Lee's The Grid course. Um, and, and Tim Conway, I was talking with him one day, and he had mentioned those. So I bought one of those, and it's really cool. And their software actually is really good. Um, and definitely there's some security issues that are there that I get to highlight at the SANS ICS Summit next week. So it'll be fun. So definitely, all PLCs have security issues for sure,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
part of that is
absolutely.
because
That's why the
the
career options are here for us, right? That we will go and then fix those security issues either through configuration and then maybe through different kind of testing. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, now let's get to the challenges side. I already see some questions being asked, but yeah, let's first challenges of learning. I think we have already covered that there are dearth of resources. These things are not available, but thanks to you, Mike, you are coming up with some very low cost or free courses, and I see a lot of value into those courses. These could be either seen on YouTube and through our huddle sessions also. I see there is good number of learning that we are trying to disseminate so people can actually get benefit out of it. For other challenges like sourcing PLCs and then getting a real experience, these are the areas uh, we don't have a fix as such, but yeah, some simulations are being done. Like this guy named Marcel Rickson, he has done a Docker image with some ICS honeypot, and then he emulated those PLC packets, and he has put up a course around it. So that could also be a good learning resource to at least experience how this packet looks like. Then there are some free resources available. I had put up a repository already on LinkedIn, which gives the pcaps of different protocols, so you can actually learn from these pcaps how this looks like in terms of the communication that is happening over the network. Yeah, so those things are, I think, good enough for starting your career, but when you are actually getting into an organization, getting along with the real systems, that will give you more understanding of these protocols, these systems, these requirements, processes, configurations, all those things. But yeah, for beginner level, those kind of resources are already available. If you really have interest, then you can actually explore them all. uh, what would you like to add to this one before we move to the next one, career transition challenge, Mike?
Yeah, I guess just I think you touch on a lot of the challenges in learning. So I just kind of circle back, and that's why I put together the course I did and put that on YouTube, and we've delivered it a couple times live now, which is great when we get folks on there from all over the world sharing their experiences, whether they're brand new or they've been in OT for 20 years, or and we have people from Dragos and like Nozomi and all these other companies come to take the course, which so we get all these folks participating and sharing. But it was really the course that I wish I had before I went to my first SANS ICS course, the GICSP, because it really helps set that stage. So hopefully, I wrote that class as a way to help people kind of overcome a lot of those initial hurdles. And it's not doesn't come with a PLC, and I'm not teaching PLC programming. There's tons of people out there that do that, but help. Hopefully, it kind of helps kind
Mhm.
of overcome that first initial hurdle.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and partly why I wrote those ebooks as well, really just to help, kind of walk through those challenges.
yeah, yeah. And those are the really good resources, Mike. Maybe I'll put the links to those books later at the comment section of this particular stream, so that people can go and then see those books. But yeah, the next one is about career transition. I already see some questions around it, like why it is so difficult to get the beginner level job in OT security when somebody is transitioning from either IT side of the world or OT side of the world. What would be the one thing that could actually help people to get into OT security beginner role at least, not if not for the advanced or mid career roles.
Yeah, you were breaking up a little bit, but I think if we're looking at kind of why is it difficult to get those roles,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the answer to that question is there are a million different answers, which doesn't really help, I know. But I think it just depends on the
Mhm,
organization, the environment, right, that you're applying to. I talk with some recruiters, especially like Ariel Loya,
mhm,
who's really great because
mhm,
she really cares for the folks that she works with, which I've always appreciated. We've had conversations about
mhm,
people trying to make that transition, and kind of how do you do that? A lot of It's just like any job, though. It's, do you have what they're looking for? Um, you know, some roles, they want you to be on site. A lot of people don't want to be on site these days, which you really can't get away from in the OT world, especially being brand new to the field. You also need to be on site,
Yeah,
right? It's
absolutely.
not a job that you can work remote and really get the experience that you need, at least for the first couple of years, like any role.
Mm.
So, and I understand if that someone's not in a life position to be able to make that change. That's definitely one of those big ones. One, a lot of the hiring managers, they're looking for somebody. Maybe they're looking for somebody from an OT background, and you're coming from IT, right? Or maybe it's the other way around, right? I've seen both, and so um, again, it just depends on the hiring
Yeah,
manager, because so like if you have a hiring manager that has a college degree, they probably expect, they're probably hiring for someone that has a college degree. If you have a hiring manager that never got a college degree, they probably don't care if you have a college degree. So it's just excuse me, one of those other factors to
yeah,
come into
yeah,
play. I think the other thing to realize is they're just, I have to be honest, there aren't a lot of roles out there. So for people that want to get into ICSOT cybersecurity, which is awesome, and we always say we need everybody. The problem is, yeah, there just aren't a ton of environments out there that are hiring. You only have so many power plants. You only have so many of these large environments that will have dedicated roles. The
yeah,
vast majority of IC and OT environments in the world today, like in water, I always immediately go to water and wastewater, right? They're everywhere. But for the vast majority of these organizations, these owners, and they're very small entities. They don't have someone dedicated to
mm,
OT cybersecurity, let alone OT. They might not even have somebody for their IT team. They have to go and farm all of that out to a consultant. So it's one of those, and I will say, if it's something that you really are passionate about and want to get into, now is the time. You don't want to, want to be trying to do this in 5 years, because I think it's going to be that much more flooded with people trying to get into ICSOT cybersecurity, and just like we see in IT, right? 5, 6, 7 years ago, we were screaming about how we didn't have enough people in IT cybersecurity, and now there's too many people, right? There's
mm,
too many people and not enough jobs to go around, and then that's kind of already how it is in the OT world today. And part of that is also, and I probably should move on, but a lot of organizations that should and probably have the budget to hire, they're just not hiring today because they just don't see the need. Now
these are,
that's changed.
yeah, absolutely valid point, Mike. Yeah, and then they are quite conflicting also. Like one side, we see a lot of reports coming every year that there is a uh, dearth of OT security professionals, and on the other side, the challenges are people are not getting hired. Both the things are conflicting. But I got this one surprising question from one of the guy on LinkedIn few months ago, that there are no roles of OT security available in the region that I am working. I'm located into. What should you suggest me to do? So I wrote him one line answer: move out of the location you are currently placed
Yeah.
into. Then he said, "Oh, I never thought of this particular thing. Let me look for the role in other side of my country." So there are these kind of
Yeah.
things are possible. Maybe you are looking for one particular locality. There are roles available in different regions of India. There are roles available in different regions of Middle East, different regions of Europe. And Middle East is one which I am observing is growing like anything. They are coming up with new plants, new manufacturing facilities, new utilities. So there are a lot of roles available. They are building new cities. So there might be a number of options for you to look for those roles. Again, as you mentioned, Mike, there is no one answer to this one why they are not getting hired. It actually depends on the and number of factors. This could be the interviewer himself, this could be the organization, this could be the skills that you are bringing to the table, and number of regions could be there. But don't
Yeah.
just bog down with one opportunity. Just keep trying. Maybe after two or three opportunities you will have the confidence, you will understand the mindset of the interviewer also, and you will eventually make your breakthrough. And once you are in, then uh, it would be comparatively easier to have a lateral movement into what is security from one organization to another. Yeah,
Yeah, and the other option we hadn't talked about, because I think we're focused mostly on getting a job like in an owner asset operator type of environment. Um, but there's always, you could go to work as a consultant, you know,
yeah,
whether on your own or, without any experience. That's
yeah.
probably not a great idea. But to get a job with a consultancy that does that work, that would be another path for folks, and that's probably on it. That probably the most approachable, I would think, for most folks.
Yeah, this is very interesting, Mike. The point that you have brought. Maybe for those folks who are really finding this transition difficult, what they can do is reach out to some companies which are working in OT security and ask for internship, part-time internship, or maybe weekend internship, something like that. That will give you more practical understanding and little bit more exposure to the OT side of the world. And eventually, when you learn more, then your chances to getting hired are, of course, more than other competitors. Okay, so yeah, we have addressed the careers, the learning challenge, the career transition challenge, and now we have one more challenge. The people who are new to OT security, they might have found a job already, but now at workplace they are having challenges. They might have the problems which they had never solved earlier. This could be like putting a process around and then making people to follow it. This could be doing a risk assessment also for an environment they are not aware of, or this could be like gelling with the IT security teams. So what would be your advice, Mike, for these kind of challenges? How do they solve them?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenges I always see are, it kind of goes back to that IT versus OT mindset that you can see in a lot of environments. Yeah, it just depends on the environment, but I think the most common is you have a team that focuses on, they're responsible for the IT side of the house. OT is responsible for the OT side of the house. Sometimes they work together, sometimes they don't. Um, so a lot of those challenges come from when they don't communicate and when they're not working together. So you have to work together, right? It's, different size of the house, but it's the same house, right? We're all trying to protect the same environment. So we need to be able to work together. And that's sometimes that's not easy. I always talk about, especially you being in the United States, and this this goes for Europe as well. But there's a couple of folks in the industrial control community that have been around for forever, and I call them the grumpy old white men, because they don't want new people coming in. They, for whatever reason, and I think that's definitely one of those challenges you see. I think in a lot of ICS OT environments that have been around for a while. So if you're not going into a brand new environment, which a lot of the work I do is, but if you're going into an environment that has existed for 10, 15, 30, 40 plus years, and you have these old timers there, then you're going to have to learn how to get on their good side. Otherwise, you might as well just look for for another job, unfortunately, because they'll make life miserable, on you. So, for me, those are honestly typically tend to be the excuse me, the some of the more common workplace issues. It's really just kind of humans trying to get along at the end of the day, and kind of
Uh,
set things aside, like ego. So.
yes, yes, yeah, yeah. So challenges are a lot. Now let's get into some strategies how they can overcome these challenges. Right. So maybe I'll share my experience first, Mike, like how I had overcome this. Of course, when you get into OT, There will always have challenge. First time you will see the plant and you'll get overwhelmed. Your discussions with the operations guys working in the plant will be completely different than what you are speaking with the boardroom meetings. So yeah, first
Right.
thing that I had done is to make a comfortable environment, a cozy environment with the people whom I am working with, and then they will start talking. So then eventually you need to learn from these foxes who are working on the actual shop floor. That's how your journey will start. After a few visits, few experiences, you'll get to know, and then you will be able to understand that maybe these plants are different, but ultimately you are working towards the same underlying automation functionality. And then now you are more exposed, more experience, and then you can relate your experience of security and automation to solve different issues in the plant. This could be your process related issues, this could be your technology related issues, this could be your network related issues. All of them can be solved. And what I had done in terms of the learning side, I had a fairly good experience working into critical infrastructure protection. So it was basically a mix of both IT and a bit of OT. So did not have a huge challenge for me, but yeah, initially when I was transitioning towards OT, I started reading some existing literature, and then it has given me more exposed view and broader understanding of the OT side of the world. Eventually, after that, I attempted the 62443 certifications and then CISSP certification. It has again exposed me more towards the overall spectrum of cybersecurity. And finally, recently, I get into the more focused learning areas like doing grid certification, which is towards response, incident response, forensic for ICS. So yeah, my strategy initially would be the same that you have mentioned. Like the people who are coming from the IT side of the world, they need to learn the OT, and that has gradually been an incremental progress for me over the last 4 or 5 years. You are a veteran, Mike. You have more experience than me, definitely. So, what would be your experience in terms of setting a best strategy for people who are trying to move into the OT side of the world?
Yeah, and for me, obviously, my experience is for somebody that's coming from an IT background, right, moving into the OT world. So I think the biggest hurdle for me, kind of goes back to is how do I, convert the OT folks into accepting me, you know, uh, and maybe becoming a Mike Holcomb fan, right? If I can get them to where they want to have a conversation with me, they love it when they see me coming. That's
Mm,
where I want it to be, not the opposite. Because sure, when I first got started 15 years ago in ICSOT, I would have been the person walking in the power plant saying, I didn't do this just to say, but I could totally see myself walking into a power plant saying, "Oh, there's a new Microsoft patch. You have to patch everything right now and reboot everything."
yeah,
Right? That would have been me. Um, but if you can take the time to learn, again, the basics, so you can have a simple conversation about that particular plant, and you can ask questions that show that you're interested and you're learning and that you're there and that you want to help. That's the best way to win those folks over.
yeah,
And yeah, just kind of bury the ego at the door. Just I go in, I pretend like, to a large degree, even in new environments today, I pretend that I know nothing. Ask those questions and learn. Again, it goes back to learning the physics of the plant. How does the plant operate, right? How does the process work? How do they build whatever they build or produce whatever they produce? Um, that really gets them, I think, on your side rather than somebody, right? And we've probably all come across that consultant that comes in, right? And they just want to tell you, right, you have to do X, Y, Z, and it's just them lecturing or preaching to you, and there's no conversation, right? You just need to be there and be willing to listen and ask, and those thoughtful questions that show that you're there, that you want to learn from their perspective. You want to hear, you know, what they understand. I think that's the biggest thing for me when I'm going into new environments. If I was going to apply for a job, right, when I go into that hiring manager, I would be asking those same type of questions. Show that you're interested in learning more, and if you go into a new environment, learn as much about that environment beforehand. Just like if you would go just for like a normal kind of IT job, right? You learn as much about that company as possible. If you're going to go apply for a job protecting a combined cycle natural gas power plant, learn everything you can about combined cycle natural gas power plants, and probably all the other types of power plants as well, including nuclear, for that conversation. So I think it's a big thing. It,
Yeah,
it, it
absolutely.
might not sound like it, but it really is. At the end of the day, that biggest hurdle is people.
Absolutely, absolutely well point. And I experience it, so I can actually vouch for this. When you talk more, the best thing is to ask people the question, and then when they answer, you learn more. But to make people to talk is what you're putting aside your egos, and then not being affirmative there, being uh, making cozy environment to those people so that they can express themselves well. And we need to reiterate when we are there that they are the bosses for the plant. We are just there for learning from these guys, not to dictate something out there. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, that's about opening the horizon when you are working in OT security, and making your environment more conducive out there. But another strategy that works well for the people who wants to grow in security is to join some communities. Mike, I see you have been participating in B sides. You have been very active in sense events. Recently, also, you are going to present in the upcoming event. You've also been presenting into different other forums. So I also vouch for the same, that people who are trying to grow into security field, they should join these different communities, attend their monthly meets, so that you will get to listen to people who are working in the field already. Maybe sometimes there are case studies, there are sometimes different talks, some discussions, some uh, keynotes, and your understanding about that particular subject will be much more refined after few such discussions and different attendances. Would you like to add something about communities, Mike?
Yeah, I would say the biggest community that people should join is LinkedIn.
Yeah,
I've been absolutely amazed at the ICSOT cybersecurity community on LinkedIn, and I find it more useful than anything. That's where we met, right?
yeah,
And where I saw Jigar. Hopefully, it's from General Mills. He's here, so hopefully I pronounced that right. But um, you get to meet so many
mhm,
people and learn. And I even just, in a post, and then you look at the comments, you can learn so much in the comments. From, again, it's just really because you bring together people from all over the world with all these different experiences, and you get to learn from everyone, and share as well, but you get to learn from everyone's experience, and it's really amazing. You cannot get that even anywhere. The closest thing I've come to that is like at a SANS conference, but again, not cheap in any stretch of the imagination. And most people can't afford to go to a SANS conference, and that's, it's kind of, you might do that once a year or once every couple of years. LinkedIn is all day, every day. It's
yeah,
really amazing how many folks are out there, and you can talk with. I mean, you can sit there and you can message people like Rob Lee, right? And
yeah, yeah,
actually get it out. I'm not, bombarded with questions, but that's where else can you do that, right? And that's
absolutely.
that's it's absolutely amazing. So yeah, I would say is participate with LinkedIn as much as possible, because I could tell I've learned so much in just the last year and a half since I've been actively posting on LinkedIn. And you don't have to actively post to learn, but definitely the more I think you help share, and you can build your personal brand, that also helps you, in that job search and in that transition. Like if I was to leave Floor today, not that I am, but if I was, I'm probably not too worried about finding another role. I think my LinkedIn personal brand has helped with that. So it's another option people should look at in helping with getting that next role.
Yeah, absolutely. This is LinkedIn is an amazing place. And one point that you mentioned, I would also like to highlight is the access to different professional across the globe is really amazing. And typically, when you reach out to them, they would respond. I try to communicate with Dale. I try to communicate with the same
Mhm.
Sense guy and different instructor from Sense, and I always get a response from them. So it's really really amazing place to have community discussion and then make more connections out there.
Yeah, it really is, and I
Yeah,
almost everybody, with the exception of a few rare, people I've met, everybody is very welcoming. Yeah, you
yeah,
mentioned like Dale Peterson who runs S4,
yeah,
any Derek Harp who runs CSA. You have I remember reading books from folks like Pascal Ackerman and Andy Greenberg and Clint Bodungen, and like I've talked with all of them. It's and some of them I consider friends now, which
yeah,
is
yeah, absolutely correct.
whole
Yes.
different world.
Yeah. Yeah, so then the next best practice is of certification versus learning. So we have already discussed this that learn focus on learning, not on certification. If you are in the beginning of your career, and you need to always weigh the investment that you are putting into certifications. If it's really worth it, then only go for a certification. Otherwise, I think um, the learning itself is sufficient. I see a lot of people they are working on bigger roles but they don't have certifications. Certification have their own advantages, but if you are just transitioning now, focus on learning more than certification itself. Try to do these different courses which are put up by either Mike or we are under auto security huddle. We are trying to do some free courses, so you will learn much more than what you are actually learning into the certification in the beginning of the career. Certification is like one marathon that you will be uh, not marathon, it would be a sprint, but learning is a marathon. You need to you know be consistent in terms of performance. Every day you will learn slowly and then you will excel in that particular field. What would you add, Mike, before we get into the next slide, which would be the last
Yeah,
one?
I could talk for 40 hours on
Yeah.
this this subject. I am a big certification person. Everybody on my team, they know every year they're pushing for a class and a
Yeah,
certification. Now, with that said, the main push is the knowledge behind the certification, right?
absolutely.
But if you're taking the time, let's say, to go through all the material for Security Plus, right? Or you go to take like Rob Lee's grid course at SANS, like if you're going through all that work and you're taking in all that knowledge, why
Mhm.
wouldn't you do the certification to prove that you have that knowledge? Right. And I understand there's some people that are just test takers and they could pass a test and it doesn't prove anything. Right. That's a whole other separate
Yeah.
conversation. But, with my team members, I always take the approach, hey, what if Floor just shuts the doors down tomorrow? Right. What if Floor doesn't exist? What are you going to do? Right. You're going to go look for another job. Well, what's going to help you find and get that another job? Right. Having a certification or not having a certification. And yeah, you're going to want the certification to help you get that job. And there are certain certifications that will help you much more, especially in the OT world. So the grid, right? That's kind of like the gold standard that anybody would want. If you have, again, that's not something that everybody can afford, right? GICSP is great. Again, can be pretty expensive. Even just taking the exam, without the course. The 62443 series is one that's excuse me, widely, accepted as well. Um, Not a ton of knowledge. It's really teaching cybersecurity basics to engineers. I think personally, more so, and a little bit of what the 62443 standard is, but it's
Yeah,
one of those that's out there that's probably the most widely accepted, and it's probably seen as the most quote unquote affordable, um, to get, all four courses and exams, again, compared to like SANS.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, so this is very valid point. Yeah, certifications have their own advantages, but if you are really in the transition phase and certification is that something that you can't afford, so focus on learning, there would be definitely some roles that you can crack. They are good in long term. You will definitely use them as your medals of experience that you had gone through the process. You now have finished the certifications and now you have that badge. I recall my certifications. So once you have this knowledge already aggregated, so you will even enjoy the training part as well. Otherwise, it will be a burden on you. You will be struggling to finish the exercises. You will be lost in terms of the content as well. But if you have some prior knowledge, these exercises, these 5-day journey, 6-day journey will be a real fun to go through. Okay, yeah. So now we are in the last slide, and we are also slightly over our allocated time. Maybe we'll quickly finish about the future of OT security. I see lot of demand in some of the regions. There are some governance also, regulation also being put up in the areas. Like if I talk about India, there would be certain regulations that will be coming in next few years. Already Europe has two different regulations coming into effect this particular year. NIS to CRA. Middle East, they are developing their own standards. The cybersecurity agency, National Cybersecurity Agency of Saudi, or maybe Dubai's different government entities, they have their own regulation. US and Canada have their own regulations. So when these regulations are there, then these utilities or other companies, specifically the government companies, they would be forced to hire OT professionals. So there would be a good number of requirements that would be generated around the globe, specifically for these asset owners, but also for the manufacturers, because they would also need to comply with these regulations. So they would require people who understand 62443 or these different regulations as such. Before we go to the last point about expectation, Mike, your thought on the demand of OT security roles in future?
yeah, it's interesting. Try to make it quick. You kind of touched on it a little bit. I think we see more people wanting to come in, which is great,
Mhm.
into the field. I see a lot of IT consultancy shops today trying to branch out and do OT.
Yeah,
And I'm already seeing some of them pull back because they're realizing there's not enough demand there for them today. Right. So it kind of is coupled into that regulation conversation, because being in the IT world, like, I want to be one of those people that government shouldn't have to come in and tell you what to do. But you're coming from the IT world in the United States. I've, seen IT over the last 30, 35 years where if the government doesn't tell you what to do, you're not going to do it.
yeah,
Right. And
absolutely.
so we need more regulation, at least for specific industries, that general the general public rely on. We have, in the United States or North America, we have things like NERC-CIP, which governs power generation and transmission. Patrick Miller talks about it's a good low bar, which is what it is, right? It's a good starting place, but these power providers need to be doing a lot more. A lot of organizations need to be doing a lot more, but so many aren't doing anything today. And so we do need regulations. As there's more regulations, you'll need things like auditors. You'll need people in like GRC roles. That's one way I think you're going to see a lot of people being able to come into OT cybersecurity in the next couple of years is, having like a GRC background from the IT world, and then being able to apply those into a, control system environment, right? So it's not a far stretch to take an IT auditor and have them come into a power plant and do a NERC SIP audit, because you're not looking at any of like the generators and the turbines, and you're just looking at Excel spreadsheets to make make sure like certain security controls are in place, right? It's pretty pretty cut and dry, function. So that could be a transition point for some people. Um, and if that's kind of how your mind works, that's a
Yeah.
good fit. So yeah, it'll be an interesting couple of years, but we do need more regulation. Regulation will create more demand. I will tell you again, there's a lot of IT consultancy shops trying to do OT today. Some are already giving up. Some are doubling down, for sure. Some are having a little success
Yeah.
against some of the big providers in the OT space. There aren't many. Again, there's just because there aren't a lot of OT, asset owners and operators that have the money to pay for that help at the end of the day. So, in the United States, they're talking about maybe the government stepping in and paying for these services. That obviously would generate more demand, but we'll kind of have to see what the next couple of years brings.
Yeah, yeah, I see this next couple of years would definitely would be something positive for this particular career areas. Yeah. Yeah, so we are at the end of this discussion. Maybe we'll take couple of questions, Mike, and then we wind up. Let me read out few of the questions. Uh,
There's Jigar again.
yeah,
Am I pronouncing that right? You can tell me. Is it Jigar?
yeah, so Jigar is correct. Yeah, so
Okay.
Jigar's. I think Jigar did not ask the question. He had just.
Now we just know each other from LinkedIn. So I
Yeah,
was gonna say hi.
yeah. He just agreed to your point of knowing the cybersecurity side of network as well. Yeah. I think this question we have already answered. Why it's so hard to get entry level job, which was asked by Sonant. Then there is one question by Amit. I think we can answer this. Just for my understanding, do I need to have automation programming knowledge if I want to get into OT security operations and GRC? Okay, so definitely you need to have the basic understanding of operations as the automation as well as the programming of the controllers, because you are getting into security operations, and the capability to detect these security incidents will be from your understanding of the automation. What are the devices which are there, how they are programmed, understanding of ladder logics and the other firmwares of uh, OT devices. Do you want to add something, Mike? This one?
No, I think that I mean you definitely want to at least have the basics.
Yeah,
Excuse me, of how do I program a PLC? Right. Again, just going
yeah,
through the process. I know for me, just going through a process of getting a PLC, having to wire it.
mhm,
Um, that was a whole other that's a whole other ordeal, right? You get a PLC, right? You install the programming software
mhm,
on your laptop, right? Now your engineering workstation, making the connection,
mhm,
making those changes to the PLC, right? And then if you have an HMI, if you have it hooked up to something, even like a trainer kit where you've got, switches and lights that you're changing, as you would an industrial process, just having that goes a long way in helping you understand the big picture and what you're trying to protect against. You don't have to be a master PLC programmer. I am not even probably a junior PLC programmer at best. You don't let me near your DCS. That's but you
mhm.
want some that just that basic experience and level of knowledge to really understand what you're working with, at least at that level, before like I would want you sitting in a chair doing OT security operations. So
Yeah. Okay, so let's get to the next one. Ashish Shajaz, which role is better in OT security? One related to consultant or others implementation like OEM company? Yeah, so I think these both are having its own good and bad. It's your personal preference, how you want to work, whether you really are a technology savvy, you want to implement this stuff, or you want to be an consultant architecting the overall infrastructures or maybe doing the gap assessments, risk assessments. It needs to be your personal evaluation. Both of them are good to me. Uh, they have their own advantages like implementation. If you are really good in terms of implementing certain technologies for greenfield and brownfield, there is a huge demand of these kind of roles. We don't have people who have good understanding of implementing active directory domain controller for ICS world, right? And consultant on the other side needs to have much more broad experience of different automation systems. You don't know which kind of client you will find next, so you need to have that understanding very well established in your mind. Do you like to add something, Mike?
I think yeah, the main points is really is personal preference. Like for me personally, I'm the type of person I want to work kind of
Mhm.
in a stable environment that I can kind of hang my hat. I've been at Floor 13 years. Um, I for a year before that, I was a consultant. I did mostly pen testing. Um, and it was cool going into all these different environments, but it was like, man, I wish I worked here, or I wish I worked here. I wish I worked here. It was just
Yeah,
so it was great getting to go into all these different types of environments, but I wanted that one place, I could call home, and I didn't feel like I had that as a consultant.
yeah,
And so that's, I found it at Floor. So I'm just one of those people that prefers kind of that full-time in-house role. And then, I do some consulting on the side. So I do get a little bit of that, and I do get to go into different environments. So I guess at this point, I get the best of both worlds. But
yeah,
if I had to choose one or the, again, it comes down to personal preference. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so then Ashwini has asked that we can use Node-RED. Node-RED can be used to create fake simulation of CAI. What are your thoughts about it? Yeah, Node-RED is being used for IoT simulations, but for OT side of the world, now we have OpenPLC, and you can buy a low-cost device like Raspberry Pi or Arduino Uno. Then you can put your OpenPLC over it. There are a bunch of protocols available. You can simulate them, and then you can use maybe Factory IO or SCADA DR, SCADA BR for your SCADA application. You can put up actually a virtual plant uh, at your home itself. So those kind of things are available. Maybe you need to explore them a bit. Okay, so maybe the last question for the day. This is the question from Indu, is saying that with over 6 years of experience in IT and a basic background in networking, I'm looking for a job in OT security. I would like to know which specific role would be suitable in OT security and which certification would help me transition into it. Yeah, so we tried to answer it more or less in our discussion, but yeah, maybe let's reiterate. Um, I think he is good with the understanding of IT security and the networking background, but I need to brush up the knowledge on the OT side of the world. So do review the courses which Mike has put up. If you want to learn for free on YouTube, he has more than 20 or 30 hours of course, Mike, right? Uh, that would give you basic understanding of OT side. And then if you are looking for certifications, there are only two big certifications that are recognized. Remaining are the certification which are not so much popular to my understanding, at least. Like these two certifications are 62443 and GICSP for beginners, and they would require significant investment. So if you want to do them, then definitely go for it. The good thing with GICSP is you can prepare yourself and then appear for the exam. But 62443 is the one that you need to first appear in the training and then write the exam. Okay, yeah. So now we are at the end of our discussion. Once again, thanks, Mike, for the comprehensive discussion. I really found some good pointers in the experience that you have shared, and I hope there is good learning for the people who joined online. Uh,
Definitely.
if you have any questions, people online, please do write us in the comment section, and we'll try to address them maybe later on offline. And we are open to any other queries if you have on your journeys into OT security. You can either reach us on LinkedIn, or maybe we have put up our emails. You can drop an email. If it is possible to answer, then we will try to answer you. We want more people in OT security. That's our motto. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Thanks, Mike, for taking time off for this particular session. I hope you will recover uh, to normal very soon, and looking forward to another enlightening discussion on OT security, maybe in few months, few weeks, whenever the time permits.
Definitely. Yeah.
All
Thanks,
right.
Shiv. And thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Okay, then have a very good rest of your evening. See you all in next security handle.
Thank you.